Hello, and welcome to the Community IT Innovators Technology Topics Podcast, where we discuss nonprofit technology, cybersecurity, tech project implementation, strategic planning, and nonprofit IT careers. Find us at communityit.com.
Thank you for joining this Community IT Podcast Part 2. You can find Part 1 in your podcast feed if you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on supporting Macs at your nonprofit. Apple's Mac computers, and especially MacBooks and iMacs, remain popular among nonprofit organizations. However, managing Macs effectively in a business environment presents a number of challenges. Today, we're going to share our insights and lessons learned from our experience of supporting over 600 Mac computers at our nonprofit clients. My name is Johan Hammerstrom. I'm the CEO of Community IT and the moderator for this webinar series. And now, it's my pleasure to welcome our Chief Technology Officer, Matthew Eshelman, and our Director of Technology Solutions, Galen Wenger.
So I'm really happy to be joined by my colleague, Galen Wenger, who really helps to drive a lot of this platform management here at Community IT. Galen?
Thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here today. So I'm Director of Technology Solutions here at Community IT. I have been involved in Mac administration since 2007. And have been with Community IT for about 13 years now, and have been involved in a push over the past few years to really make our kind of top tier Mac management service. And I'm happy to be here to share what we've learned.
So MDM is this kind of element that's built into the Mac OS operating system, and then is able to be leveraged by these tools that can register as a mobile device management platform. And so that is different from the traditional agent-based support platform that many organizations have traditionally used. And there's a lot of different tools out there to do this. If you Google Mac MDM support or Mac management, you're going to get a lot of different options for that. And some of them are really good. Again, if you are, managing just the computers in your organization and need kind of lightweight inventory and kind of configuration, then solutions like the Kanji and Mosel are geared towards those type environments. The big player is there in the middle. So Jamf, having a lot of sophistication and capability and API integration with other tools. Okta comes to mind as being able to integrate some workflow so that your device registration can be passed into from Jamf into Okta. But those are really kind of all Mac management tools. We've also got Workspace ONE here. So that's a VMware product that actually combines Mac and Windows management into a single MDM platform. In the same way, Microsoft Intune or Endpoint Manager is also, kind of combines the ability to manage both Mac and Windows devices from a single platform, with the caveat that the Mac management just isn't as robust as it is in some other platforms. And then we have the solution up top, which is Adigy, which is built for managed service providers like us that need to have what's called multi-tenancy. So the ability to kind of securely manage discrete clients so that we can leverage some economies of scale, not have to rewrite things for each individual organization, and then provide some management. So again, there are a lot of different options for for Mac management. And there may even be more coming. So I think, Galen, you were talking about some changes that Apple is making potentially to provide some of these services as well.
That's right. So while Apple has supported MDM within iOS and Mac OS for a while, they haven't had their own. They bought one last year, Fleetsmith, and it just came out, I think, in the past week that they're doing a beta now of an Apple mobile device management solution targeted at small and mid-sized businesses. that is basically, rebranded of FleetSmith, I think, along with maybe some iCloud storage and a couple other add-ons there. I think it's great. We'll see how great it is, but I think in general it shows some intentionality from Apple in supporting Macs in the enterprise and organizations, and that's really valuable. There have been times in the past where it felt like Macs were maybe more focused on the consumer market, not as focused on the business and organizational market. And I think we definitely see now that Apple is continuing to focus on this environment. The one other thing I'll mention here, looking at these different options, there's some great solutions out there that come in at different price points and at different feature sets. The big one that comes up in conversations that we have with some of our clients is, well, Intune can do it. Can we just do Intune for everything? Intune's fantastic on the Windows side, and Intune does have the necessary bits to be the device management provider for Mac, but it's not going to provide you with the kind of turnkey Mac management that you see in some of these other solutions. You're far more likely to have to rely on other third-party and open source tools to kind of build your configurations and make it all work. And it's going to be, feature deficient compared to many of the other tools here. Some people do use it and use it to great effect, but one of the other challenges that I know we see when we come in and see maybe a client that has their own Mac MDM, some are really being used well, but a lot, they have the capabilities there in the technology, but it's a lot of work and configuration expertise that it can take to really make it sing. And so it can be a challenge. And in those cases, maybe a better option is to work with a service provider or get in one of these MDMs that's maybe a little lower on the sophistication and a little more turnkey.
Yeah, so I think with that in mind, what went into our decision to kind of pick a tool, to pick Adigy whenever we were looking for these kinds of solutions.
Yeah, so a big one was the multi-tenancy. Most of those the solutions that we displayed before are targeting single individual organizations, and if you are working with Macs and an individual organization, check out one of those other tools. They're fantastic. What Adigy provides us is the ability to have multiple clients in a single management environment where we can build configuration packages, applications, and then deploy them out across multiple organizations at the same time. And that's really how we're able to deliver, efficient service and make sure that we're delivering, the best possible experience to all the organizations that work with us. I would say, one of the questions that we get from folks who have done a lot of Mac support in the past is, why aren't you using Jamf, which is the legacy big player and can do it all? And, if Jamf had a MSP multi-tenant option, maybe we would be. I would say Adigy, it's a newer solution. It's one that's really had some, great active development. And we found it to be a very reliable and solution, and one that, short of some special Jamf specific integrations with like Okta, I think you mentioned, Adigy can do everything that Jamf can do. And so we've been happy to partner with them and look forward to continuing with them.
Yeah. I would say, for those of you that are on, if you just want to chat in, if you are in that category of being 100% Mac shop, if you want to chat in the tool that you're currently using and kind of what you like about it, or maybe what you don't like about it, I'd really be curious to hear about that. I think the other thing that I would kind of tag on to the kind of the benefits of Adigy or some of the other additional integrations that it provides, and that being some remote support tools. So that's that interactive remote support so that you can get access to an end user's desktop, help them install some software, figure out why their printer isn't working or whatever that happens to be. And so that, capability is not available, kind of out of the box with the Mac OS. And so you need a third-party tool. And so that's something that we're able to get through Adigy is a way to provide remote support to those managed devices. So it goes beyond just being able to, inventory the device, make sure that we get all the attributes about the hardware, the warranty information, if we can, the file vault escrow, but then also being able to provide remote support, push down configurations, deploy software, do all of those additional tasks that that need to be done in order to have a well supported and well managed environment. So specifically about that, this is our best practices or our roadmap for how we support Mac devices at our clients. And this is, I think this is interesting. This is the same, maybe if if you have one computer or if you have 50, the process is the same. And things are changing a little bit as well, particularly related to that first line where we have purchased computers through ABM. So that stands for Apple Business Manager. Galen talked about that at the beginning. And so this is, if you're in the Windows world, this could be considered analogous to Autopilot. So it's a way to automatically associate a device with an organization and then push a configuration. So, so you can purchase computers, from Apple, from different vendors, and as long as they can register your purchase with your Apple Business Manager account, and you have a MDM solution set up, that purchase will automatically be associated with your organization and get your MDM profile pushed to those devices. So that's fantastic, and it's great if you can do that right off the bat. You can apply for an Apple Business Manager account. There's no additional cost associated with that, but it's something you do need to do in advance. There is one change. It used to be that the only way that you could do this was kind of at the beginning or at the purchase through like an approved vendor. And if you bought a device, through some other channel, or if the purchase didn't get registered through, I guess it was called the device enrollment program back then, you're kind of out of luck and you had to like manually go through or you weren't able to kind of do that automated enrollment. It does look like that is changing. And so Apple is now providing a way to do automated or kind of manual enrollment of devices in your MDM platform kind of after they've been purchased. So I think that's a really good change that Apple has made in order to support some of that. So I'll go ahead and chat that link out if you're curious to read a little bit more. But yeah, so again, you want to talk a little bit more about that, kind of enrollment process and kind of what happens for onboarding new devices.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I would say I think it's fantastic that Apple's moving to support post-purchase enrollments. It does look like I think you would need an IT administrator would need physical presence with the device, so you aren't going to be able to enroll that device if you're shipping it directly to a remote user. And I would still encourage you, if you're able to, have your purchase device registered with Apple Business Manager through Apple or through an Apple authorized reseller should be able to handle that. From there, if your device is enrolled in Apple Business Manager, then it gets automatically assigned to your mobile device manager. And so when whoever is doing that initial setup of the computer, one of those screens, along with picking your time zone and whatnot, is going to say, hey, you're being assigned to your organization's device management solution. From there, you can pick on what you want to do additionally to enroll that device. And so in an ideal scenario, you have your device management solution is pushing down the applications that they need, the configurations that they need. And so, within an hour of getting that device turned on, it has everything that the end user needs to do their job. As I mentioned before, we do side with creating local admin user accounts, both for the end user and for create a IT administrative account, which is going to be useful, if there's a user departure or if you just need access to that device. Particularly if you have File Vault on there, it can be useful to have an IT administrative account there. Along with deploying software, deploying management configurations is going to be big. And that's the configurations that you need to deploy are often going to be defined by the applications, particularly the management security applications that you're using. So if you're using an antivirus or EDR tool, or if you're using some file collaboration tools that maybe help you view your cloud files locally, or maybe you're using an endpoint backup tool, those tools more likely than not will require you to define permissions, and you want to push those permissions down in advance of installing that software so that software is going to work well. And so again, we have a workflow. In some cases, we're able to we'll display a splash screen to the user who's receiving that device so they know each step of the process, what's going through. So let's say, hey, you've got the device enrolled, you've got it configured through your MDM, it has the software they need, then maintaining it from there. So again, you're going to need to update regularly for security updates. And that is one where, quite frankly, for the past year, we've really been leveraging reporting and then some end user notification to encourage the end users to install those updates. I think we've seen a lot of security update and vulnerability concerns on both the Windows and Mac and iOS side this year. And it really drives home that being able to turn around those security updates on a timely basis is really important. And so that's something where you want to be keeping an eye on your device. It's not, we looked at the major versions previously of 10, 15, 11, 12. It's not just that. You got to look at that next number to see, hey, are they actually running a version that has the most recent security updates? And then from there, our general practice at this point is to defer those major OS upgrades. So going from 10.15 to 11 or 11 to 12 for 3 to 6 months. And we feel that this is, a good enterprise best practice. That's not to say that we don't already have some Monterey devices in the mix. And, depending on, for your organization, what your Mac purchasing is like, you may know that, hey, as soon as that new operating system comes out, it's what the new devices ship with, and you can't downgrade it. So to some degree, there's always going to be some of the latest operating system version in the mix. But why do we want to wait? So a big one is, again, application compatibility, and particularly for your, business enterprise applications. That's where I think you're going to see some of the biggest challenges. Your endpoint security agent, your file collaboration tools, your backup tools, they often need at least a couple months to really make sure that not only that they support the operating system, but that they support it well. And I think I mentioned previously that the Catalina and Big Sur upgrades, so last year's upgrade and the one before that, were really disruptive for some of our users. And I would say, for our folks who did upgrade early, there was some early adopter pain there. And hey, maybe that's all right for your organization. But if your focus is on stability, defer those upgrades for a few months until you're able to test and validate it, and then you can roll it out.
Yeah, and again, I think that's a good distinction to make between kind of those major OS version updates, which are coming out about once a year, and the security updates, which are coming out about every other month. So again, you may not need to necessarily go to the most current version, but you do need to make sure that those security updates are coming out, because as Galen said, we are seeing security vulnerabilities being exploited in the Mac OS world. We are seeing the need for endpoint security tools to be deployed in a way that maybe we didn't, say, 5 years ago, where it was much more, hey, it's secure, it's not a big threat profile. But I think that is certainly shifted over the last several years. So as we look to kind of talk about the lessons learned that we have, I will just kind of chat out a link. We have a little bit of a case study on our website in terms of how we approached Mac support for a mid-sized organization. And just to kind of highlight here at the very beginning. So you do need an official MDM tool to manage Mac. So not an RMM, not just a support agent, but a full-featured MDM. In the chat, I saw that there was one attendee that was using Meraki's System Manager, yes, which is another MDM. It has the benefit, I think, of being free for maybe up to 100 users with community-based support. So we've seen that in the mix as well. But you need a tool like that if you're gonna manage your Macs. And then I don't know, I think Galen has talked about it quite a bit already in terms of that change management is tricky. There's as opposed to Microsoft, which really plays in the enterprise space, has insider programs, has a long lead time, publishes roadmaps of what's going to be changed, and then seems to communicate that well in advance. The Mac changes aren't often as clearly published, to the vendors, and they're kind of dropped on the users in a pretty kind of short time frame. So that can have a bit of an impact on kind of on the supportability. And then I think the other thing that that Apple gets dinged for a little bit is there's not an officially published formal support schedule. So whereas the Windows will be like, hey, we're going to support Windows 10 through, I don't know, is it 2025 or whatever it happens to be, like that's kind of well published in advance. There's a little bit of mystery in terms of what's being patched, when it's going to be patched, and that information is not always readily available. So again, I think it's important to just go into that and keep up to date with things. So again, I think life cycle replacement is still appropriate. So again, at Community IT, like a 3 to 4 year replacement cycle is appropriate for all end user computing devices. It doesn't matter if they're a Mac or a PC. If you've got that 8-year-old MacBook that's still running, hey, that's great, but let's make sure that as a standard practice, you're in a habit of replacing devices and keeping them updated. So again, everything in your environment should be on one of those most recent 3 operating system versions. And it's especially with the shift, I think, into the Apple Silicon, it's unclear, I think, just how far back and kind of which devices and kind of how far back Apple's going to go in keeping older operating systems up to date. So and then again, I think the lesson learned, the final one there, it's very much more of a user-centric approach. As Galen mentioned, we are reliant a lot on the end user to initiate changes, whether that's to process an update for the security update, but it's a lot more end user driven than it is in the Windows world, where we can kind of do a lot of automated management in the back end.
Yeah, Matt, if I could just add one thing on that change management thing, if you're thinking about, okay, hey, we've presented the problem, change management is rougher than on the Windows side, well, what do I do about that? I would say, focus on your key software vendors on the Mac side and make sure that you are in the loop on whatever the release notes, if you're a release note reader, or their email notifications. The Apple release notes on Mac OS are not going to necessarily identify the user impacting changes that may show up in a security update. But your device management solution, your antivirus EDR, if you have anything, not Microsoft Office, but some of the other maybe more specialized software, that's the stuff where you'll find out maybe a late breaking change that I'm going to have to, adjust my management profile or prepare my users for an alert that they may receive when this update happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Well, I think we have a little bit of time for questions, and actually see one that came in. So Johan, I'll read that, and if there's others, we can certainly take them as well. So there was a question about advice for people on using personal Apple IDs for corporate-owned Macs versus corporate Apple IDs. Does it make a difference? Galen, what would you say in terms of how to handle that Apple ID management?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say, in the small to mid-sized business space, you're probably still seeing a lot of folks using personal Apple IDs just because there wasn't really a great option otherwise. Apple has been doing a better job, I think, within the past year or two of rolling out a managed Apple ID solution through the Apple Business Manager. So it allows you to, basically register reserve your domain name within Apple Business Manager and then hand out IDs to users that are tied to the organization. And so, that really helps with, say, software purchasing if we're doing App Store purchases, as well as just some greater making sure that the organizational data stays with the organization. That managed Apple ID can tie into Azure AD for single sign-on. I believe maybe Okta as well. I'm not positive on that one. And so that's great. I will say we found the transition can be challenging. If you have been using Macs in your organization for a while, there are probably some personal IDs with your organizational domain name out there, that as part of that migration process, they're going to have to be moved to a new personal email address. And there is a process for that, but it can be a little disruptive for users. And so it's something to, plan ahead on and consider through. I think if you're able to have the bandwidth for that change, I think it's one that pays dividends in the long run, is having those managed Apple IDs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great. We do have a few questions. I see another question that just got submitted. We definitely encourage you to ask questions. And I do have some questions that were submitted before the webinar that I'll ask you in just a second. But in terms of one of the ones that was just asked, for the Microsoft Office suite, particularly applications like Outlook and Excel, what sorts of differences do you see functionality-wise between the Microsoft Windows version and the Mac OS version?
Well, to take a brief historical view, it's much better feature parity than it was, 5 and definitely 10 years ago. I would say my experience, and other folks in the panel, feel free to weigh in. There's definitely some UI changes, and it's probably more on the subtle level at this point, but some of the configuration options and buttons are in different locations. We've seen more recently that as Microsoft has shifted the UI in Office apps over time, those changes landed on Mac first. And so, if you're in a support role for your organization, you may find that, hey, how I do things on the Mac side is changing more quickly than on the Windows side. In terms of actual features, I think some of the real fine-grained controls on Outlook can sometimes be more challenging or not quite possible on the Mac side. But I think those issues are far fewer than they were before. I don't personally know of any, Excel or other application limitations at this point. Again, I'm sure there's some subtle stuff, and if you're, macros and so on, I would think maybe that would be an area that you run into. But I don't know, Matt, do you have any additional thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not a Mac user, so I don't have a lot of insight in there. I do know our COO is primarily uses the Mac and has done lots of really impressive stuff with Power BI, which I think has all been kind of been out of the Mac world. So I think the feature parity is much improved, and I don't have a lot of specifics about kind of what you may be differences between those two platforms.
I can weigh in. I have a Windows machine at work, but a Mac from at home, and I use it for some volunteer work that I do, and use Excel in particular in Windows and in the Mac. I much prefer Excel in Windows, and it's simply personal preference. I do a lot with pivot tables, and it's just set up differently. In the Mac OS version, it's not any less feature rich. You can do everything that you can do. It just has a different feel to it, and so that's something to keep in mind. But our CFO for many years did all kinds of advanced Excel work on a Mac that really blew my mind that you could do that much. So it works. It's just a question of what you're used to, I think. So one of the questions that's come up several times has to do with iOS devices. A lot of organizations that have Mac OS devices also have iOS devices. Just kind of briefly, like how much of what you've talked about today in terms of managing Mac OS devices through MDM can be applied to iOS devices, both in terms of concepts as well as specific solutions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So on the MDM side, most or all of the MDMs that can do Macs can also do iOS devices. And so you are able to register your Macs, your iOS devices, and in the same device management solution. What we've said about doing managed purchasing for Macs and tying that into Apple Business Manager, that also applies to iOS. And so I think if you're looking at a holistic strategy that's including mobile devices, looking at a solution that includes both is great. The actual process or what you go through in terms of the management, I think can be a little more varied depending on your use case. We will see that a lot of organizations in the small and mid-size range, on the iOS side, they're probably pushing out to some key security settings. Hey, I want to make sure we have a passcode on here and the device is encrypted, and maybe I'm pushing my VPN profile on there, that sort of thing. Not as many are doing application assignments, though you can push down App Store apps, through your Mac MDM and through Apple Business Manager. And I think about the device management tool set in our solution, Adigy. There's a lot of reactive remote support tooling for the Mac OS environment that doesn't really apply to iOS. iOS is more just, hey, I'm pushing down the apps and configurations, getting back some basic inventory and configuration information. But yeah, definitely recommend it. I think too, some of what we've also said around security updates applies to iOS as well. And so at least having visibility, that base level inventory, even if you aren't really like pushing down some update management settings, I would encourage that. Know whether your users are several versions behind on their iOS updates. That's important.
Yeah, and I think I would just echo that. I think for me, I think the big driver is kind of between corporate and personal owned devices in terms of what you're going to be able to deploy to them. So again, on corporate owned devices, kind of that full MDM enrollment where you have the management kind of profile installed and you can push down things to the device, makes a lot of sense in the corporate world. For the corporate owned devices, I think for personal owned devices, you need to be really clear, and I'll make a pitch for kind of our cybersecurity roadmap in terms of starting with policy and kind of making those decisions at an organization level in terms of what you're going to do from the policy side. And again, if I do think it's important that organizations are clear about which devices are accessing their data and what happens to that. And so that can be addressed through MDM profiles. If you're in the Office 365 world, there's also some things called mobile application management where you can actually manage the applications that people are accessing, not the device themselves. And so there's a little bit of distinction there in terms of how much can be done on a device management. But again, I would certainly echo the fact that security updates are key, and it's really important to keep things up to date. We've seen a lot of maybe things in the press about zero-day vulnerabilities, exploiting various weaknesses in the iOS environment to allow kind of adversaries to take over a device or get access to contacts and messages and that kind of thing. And so making sure that your device is not jailbroken and you're updating it on a regular basis is a really important security practice.
Great. Yeah, that's very good advice. So for organizations that are Google centric, maybe they use Google Workspaces for their identity management and productivity suite. Maybe they have a lot of Chromebooks that they manage in their environment. Do any of these recommendations change for more Google-centric organizations? Can they manage Macs in the Google Administrator, utility? Do you have any specific advice for people who are in the Google world?
Yeah, great question. I unfortunately can't speak directly to the capabilities on managing Macs in the Google Workspace environment. I think to make a more general take, having a dedicated Mac MDM as a general rule really provides a much greater level of control and manageability. I know there is some capabilities there for iOS, but especially if you want to be able to deploy apps and that sort of thing, I would probably look at having a third-party tool. Beyond that, in terms of, I think we do see Mac-only organizations in general probably erring a little more towards the Google Workspace world instead of the Microsoft world on some of the collaboration tools, and they work very well together. It's a good pairing. So yeah, Matt, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think there is some built-in capability to do Mac OS management in the Google console. I'm not sure how far down that extends, and so again, I think for a lot of these tools, like Kanji and Mosel and stuff, you can do kind of a base level amount of stuff with a lot of different platforms. I think the question really goes whenever you're developing your requirements. If you need a little bit more sophisticated control, if you need more support capabilities, then you're probably going to be pushed into some of those third-party tools like Jamf or Adagey or whatever that have that capability to kind of do more than just a base level of control and configuration management.
Great. Well, I think we are basically at time. Before we go, we want to just let you know that this is our last webinar for 2021. Our next webinar will be in January, and it's one of our most popular, our annual Nonprofit Tech Trends. We gather our technology experts for a roundtable discussion of what we see coming up in technology, and particularly in nonprofit technology for the coming year. So keep an eye out. The reminder for that, or the registration link, is going to go out in about a month. And we would love to have you join us on Wednesday, January 19th at 3 o'clock for that discussion. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your time and your attention. And we wish you happy Thanksgiving and a great rest of November. Take care.
Thank you for joining this Community IT Podcast Part 2. You can find Part 1 in your podcast feed if you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
Community IT does these free webinars and podcasts for our community, and we love sharing our knowledge and experience. If you have more questions or are having trouble with your IT at your nonprofit, please get in touch with us on our website, www.communityit.com, so we can start a conversation or schedule an assessment. Downloading any of our free resources there will get you signed up for our webinar reminders, and you can attend our next webinar in real time and ask our experts your own questions. If you love podcasts, please subscribe and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits.